Solidarity Fund was founded in March 2020 as an urgent and multi-pronged support fund following the devastation caused by the COVID-19 pandemic in South Africa. Now, 18 months on, the fund is looking to wind down, and I have with me in studio Ms. Tandi Nzimande, who's the CEO of the Solidarity Fund, to tell us a little bit more about how far they've come and why it is now coming to a close. But before we even get there, Tandi, first, thank you for joining us this evening. This fund could be considered really a case study in how government, private sector, and civil society can come together really quickly to do something good. 300,000 individual donations, 86 million rand. It is quite something.
It really is incredible. It is incredible how South Africa stood up together and came and supported the cause and came to respond to this unknown pandemic that was coming towards us. Over 300,000 South Africans, in fact also some international donors, but South Africans of every walk of life. Talking about people who are donating through the ShopRite platforms, right through to the billionaires who were able to provide a significant funding to the Solidarity Fund. But every cent really counted in terms of what the Solidarity Fund has been able to achieve. And it's really on the back of the people who sought to support the response to COVID-19.
And there were three main focus areas, at least when the fund started, right? It
yes.
was your response to healthcare and two others. Let's talk about some of the interventions when it comes to health especially that you guys were able to
respond to. So there were three, there are three COVID fund response pillars, and those are the health pillar, which obviously as the pandemic was a health issue, that was the key focus and remains a key focus for us. There's the change and the behavior change and communications pillar, as well as the humanitarian pillar, which was in recognition of the fact that health pandemics also have humanitarian impacts, and it is important to respond to those. In terms of the health pillar and the work that we've done in the health pillar, we started out right at the outset with PPE, which was for frontline healthcare workers. You'll recall at the time, back then 2 years ago now, masks were nowhere to be found. The quality of masks, the pricing of masks, and a variety of PPE. And the Solidarity Fund, actually, that remains our largest program to date in terms of spend, was the PPE. That was followed quite quickly with an amazing project that brought together various aspects of government and various aspects of business in the creation of a South African-produced ventilator. And we're very proud of that kind of legacy that we will be leaving behind. As we progressed and as the as the pandemic progressed, so we went into essential equipment, which really is equipment that assists hospitals to respond when COVID patients are coming in numbers. So that's beyond now the ventilators only, it's other essential equipment. Again, that essential equipment will be equipment that remains in the hospital system long after the pandemic has peaked, we hope. Vaccinations quickly became something that was going to be very, very significant in how you address the pandemic. And so we have spent quite a bit of, allocated quite a bit of money on vaccinations, starting with the COVAX down payments that we did in December 2020, and going through to supporting access for healthcare workers again, and now we're into outreach sites, getting to the people who find it hardest to come to the available sort of larger sites for vaccination. And one of the things that I think is pivotal was the support that we provided with other donors to DG Marie Trust. And that was for technical assistance to the National Department of Health, which actually cascaded down into the provincial Department of Health, right through into districts in terms of the resources that were provided.
I mean, I have to ask you a little bit about how you managed 3.3 billion without incident, because if we look back on how government, when they were left to their own devices, managed PPE funding and disbursements, the track record is quite poor. Whereas you guys had over 2 billion rand that you've been able to disperse to healthcare and done it and managed it correctly in order to ensure it got to the right hands. What do you think is missing between the way you guys managed this fund and were able to deliver and how our government perhaps goes about its delivery?
I think really, in terms of how the fund has been structured, there was a keen focus on agility, so making sure that things happen really quickly. That came supported by very strong governance, and very fortunate to have a very strong board led by our chairman, Gloria Serobe, and our deputy chairman, Adrian Enthoven. Very, very strong board we have. And that board made sure that the governance structures underneath are very strong. I always say to colleagues who were in the Solidarity Fund right at the heat of the pandemic, I always say I am eternally grateful that they put in such strong governance structures from the get-go, and that agility and governance had to work hand in hand. I'll give you an example of what I mean by a different kind of governance. You will know that in normal circumstances, board meetings are held perhaps 4 times a year, more or less. Yeah? At the Solidarity Fund, to support that agility whilst bringing strength of governance, the board sets every 2 weeks, twice a month it's set. The other subcommittees underneath it were sitting twice a week. These are people who, in their own right, have their own jobs and have their own very heavy responsibilities that they carry. Yet they spent that much time on the Solidarity Fund, making sure that the decisions made, well, there was extreme rigor around it, and then as it was cascaded up, there was significant rigor right through to the payment processes. So I do think that the setting up of the fund is something that perhaps will, again, leave as a legacy.
So why wind it down?
So the pandemic has moved on. The Solidarity Fund was set up very much as a fund to very rapidly respond to an unknown pandemic. In fact, I think initially we all were under the impression that we're talking about 3-week, 3-month type of horizon, and that's how the Solidarity Fund was set up for those kind of timelines. We are still here 2 years in, but we do think that in terms of how the pandemic has developed and how the health systems, both private and public, have developed, there's a much greater sense of comfort around how do we respond to the changes that happen with the pandemic, with the waves, and so it is that the kind of initiative that we really bring is less and less required.
So you created this fund. It rapidly responds to challenges we face. We saw the next challenge that you guys responded to being the July unrest. We're not out of the woods yet as a country as we try and rebuild our economy and grapple with all of those challenges. Surely there is still room for what you guys can provide.
Indeed, there has been significant thought applied to how should we structure the next phase of the Solidarity Fund. And after much discussion, the focus, the conclusion was that we ought to be responding to larger issues where the Solidarity Fund brings additionality. In the context of the KwaZulu-Natal unrest, and Gauteng, the July unrest, we responded because we're very concerned about the COVID spillover as well in terms of that. So that was broadly within mandate. However, the board has taken the decision that we need to be responding to calamities of similar size to the COVID pandemic rather than the ongoing crises where, in fact, there are people who are well placed to respond to those crises.
Well, this is a developmental fund model, I think, that we could take forward and expand in different ways across the country. And Solidarity Fund has shown us that it is possible for all players in society to come together to solve South Africa's challenges really quickly. And I hope that in the work you do going forward, you try and bring that message along as well. That was Tandi Nzimande, the CEO of the Solidarity Fund, talking to us about how the fund is soon going to wind down the excellent work that it has done so far. But that's all from here, from us for now. Let's see what's happening in your market.